Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Caramoor conversation. I'm Kathy Schuman, the artistic director at Caramoor, and I have two members of the Ivalas Quartet, Tiani and Ruben, who are violinists in the quartet, and our composer Derrick joining us from California, even though it looks like he's on a beach somewhere in the tropics. Um, and we wanted to talk today a little bit about the new piece written by Derrick for the Ivalas called Deliverance, which will be premiered here at Caramoor on February 25th. And just to give a little background, the Ivalas Quartet was Caramoor's string quartet in residence last season. And as part of their residence, they give several concerts at Caramoor and go into local schools. But their final concert of the residency was supposed to take place and feature the premiere of this work, which Caramoor commissioned for them. However, due to a change in personnel of the quartet, we postponed the premiere and their final concert to next month. So we're thrilled that this day is finally coming. Just to say that, again, as part of this residency for our resident quartet, we have commissioned a piece for the last 23 years for quartet. So we've now built up an incredible library of pieces. And we feel it's a really great opportunity for a young quartet to have a piece written just for them. So I'm just going to kick off by asking Ruben to say maybe how Derrick became the artist that you wanted to commission, because we did leave that up to you. Please suggest composers.
Thanks, Kathy. So we were really excited about the prospect of commissioning a piece because this is the first time that we've actually done that. Played some works that composers had written maybe for us, but not that we had requested. So it was really fun to do this, and we had a long list of people, and Derrick was one of our top choices. So we were really happy that we got him. One of the things that is really fun about this is we had heard his piece, American Mirror, which is a string quartet. So he's written for quartet before. And that's something that we really considered when we were looking for composers, because it's kind of hard to tell how someone's going to write for a string quartet if they haven't done it. So we love that piece, and I urge anybody watching this to check it out. It's a great work. So we told Derrick that when we met with him, that we enjoyed that piece, and he's given us something that is really exciting, and we're really happy to finally premiere it. You know, it was supposed to happen in the summer, but it's great to be able to do this now. And the piece has some big challenges for us, because we are used to tuning in Western tuning and getting used to doing that. And so we spend a lot of time on that. And Derrick has included some different influences in the piece. So there's some Persian tuning. And to someone who's not familiar with it, it just kind of sounds like microtonality, but it really has to be in tune. So it's like working on that's been a lot of fun, and we can't wait to premiere the piece. And Derrick was kind enough to give us exercises that we could just focus on that tuning with, because that's one of the most important aspects of the piece. So do you have anything to add, Tiani?
Oh, I think you covered all of the things. We were really excited that because Derrick was one of our top choices, that this actually worked out for us. And we're very thankful for Caramoor for, being so integral in this process. And it's just amazing that we're at that step in our lives, in our career, that we can have a work commissioned for us and work with a composer through the process and get to talk to him and work through all of the really difficult things in this piece. But yeah, it was really awesome listening to so many different composers and narrowing it down. Our quartet's mission is really focused on uplifting BIPOC voices and creating a space, a platform for them, just as well as all of the composers that we know and love, the Beethovens, the Haydns, the Mozarts. But these other works that are not, they don't have that much visibility. They are, to us, and should be to hopefully all of our audience members, just as worthy and just as important. And so that really came into play when we were thinking about composers and composers' backgrounds and their influences and how, because that really can add so much to a piece, just, a different background, a different perspective. And Derrick really brought that to this piece. So we're very excited.
Maybe Derrick, you could speak a little bit to the combining of the Persian influences and North African, and as well as Bach chorales. So there's so much influence in this piece, and that's one of the things we love about how you compose.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background is I mean, I consider myself an American, in a way that I think is unique to the world, because nobody should be able to say what an American is or looks like. And I think that that kind of ambiguity is something that I think the world could benefit from, because then people can just be people. And part of me kind of defining what this is kind of deconstructing the, the segregation of musical languages. Right. And the American Mirror was a piece that kind of is going down that direction or goes down that direction. And then this piece is also a piece that goes down that direction. This piece, I wanted to go like a lot further than I did in American Mirror. Not simply because like, well, I'm just gonna give him something crazy hard. Oh, this is gonna be, but something that I've always wanted to hear a string quartet do, because a string quartet has always just sounded like a string quartet. Everybody kind of hears a string quartet and like that's the sound of string quartet. But then when you add in some of these modal microtonal systems and some of these different kinds of systems, all of a sudden the sound of the string quartet seems like it sounds just a little different than a string quartet, which has been around for hundreds of years. And I think that that's something that's really exciting to me. And then getting to what Ruben was just mentioning about the context of the piece. So the piece is essentially like Afro-Persian classical music, which I find really, really fun. Like, what a way to just kind of keep bringing things together, not just saying, oh, we're going to do East and West, but we're going to do multiple portions of the East, multiple portions of the West. And it just becomes very like spherical, very like whole world-ish, coming into one specific moment in music. So yeah, so the piece is Afro-Persian, but also by proxy, it's very classical. I love linear music writing in classical music. So music that comes from Palestrina, Lassus, William Byrd, some of these early motets. And then I also love Bach, especially fugal Bach writing, fugal lines, because of their linear flow. There's all of these kind of magical harmonies and stuff that pop out when things aren't super vertical. So a lot of my music, including American Mirror, tends to be like polyphony on steroids, I guess. If you will, I'm sure that's what you had to experience trying to sort through some of these chorale like wildness. I think it just there's also sections in the piece where the microtonalism is sitting with, I guess, in a way, vertical chord changes in the style of Bach, but one of the instruments is microtonal. And I remember when I first wrote it, because I write through performance. I don't sit down and you know do pencil to paper. That's too slow. And so I record and record and record, and I go back and engrave all of the and beautify the recordings. And that part, that there's a specific part where the microtonalism comes, but with the style of Bach. And when I first wrote it, I was like, wow, this it's out there. Is this gonna work? But there was something I thought that was very beautiful about it, even though it sounded like different. It sounded very odd, and at first there's like a resistance, but then you're like, you know what? That actually sounds beautiful to me. Like, even though it's not, even though you're used to the sound of these kinds of chord changes, and you're used to like a certain type of perfection, right? But because it's a certain type of perfection, that means there's multiple types of perfection, and there could be another type of perfection in which it's not that sound, the sound that we would think is supposed to be perfect. And then that's where, and it was kind of in that moment of thinking about those things, because I usually never title a piece until I'm done with the piece. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh, well, this this kind of sounds like I'm like being freed from like the anxiety of like perfection, of thinking one way that perfection can only be one way, rather than perfection can be many ways. And it really, it's just, well, how do you feel? Does it feel good to you? Is it evoking like this kind of emotional response? And so that's where the title Deliverance comes from. It comes from like this sensation of freedom from because you're embracing imperfection and vulnerability.
Perfection is a very subjective term as far as I'm concerned.
Very, 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 very subjective.
And probably when you're talking about classical music, yeah, we all think of certain things with that word, but it's nice to know you're breaking that all up. And I'm assuming that this is a thread that runs through most, if not all, of your work. Is that right, Derrick? This sort
Oh,
of
all of it. Yeah, all of it.
transcultural, I think you've called it all. And so
That's right. Yeah.
and just going back just a bit for, because obviously this may be the first piece written for the Ivalas, but you've written many, many works and probably had many commissions. And I'm guessing that an orchestral commission is very different from a solo commission or a quartet. Or how do you, once you've accepted to write something, what's the next step for you? How do you proceed then?
I guess a lot of it for me at first is logistics. I just want to know like what are the edges of the what are the edges of the stage that I'll be on so I don't fall over the side. Um, so I just, I need to know how long it is. What's the concert theme? A lot of times they'll have, we're programming you on this concert and it's got this other piece on there, and we'd love to be able to kind of talk about all of these pieces under the same thematic material. And so I'll take that into account.
I couldn't remember if you guys emailed or had a conversation just in general about.
Oh yeah. Well, and that was what Ruben had spoke about, that they had reached out because they liked American Mirror. And so I was like, oh, well, if you like American Mirror, boy, have I got something for you, because I had been thinking about this piece, um, this concept of a piece for like since I wrote American Mirror. It's like, well, a very natural next step to something. If it wasn't called Deliverance, it could be called American Mirror too, you know? And so, yeah, so there was certainly a conversation before, but because I knew they liked American Mirror, I knew that they were going to be okay if I kind of continued that methodology in this other quartet.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
And maybe Tiani or Ruben, if you can just speak a little bit. I mean, we're throwing these words around like microtonal or whatever, but can you talk about just some of the physical challenges to play? What is that for you to play? Like, how is it difficult?
Well, I think just talking about the passage that, going back to the passage that Derrick was mentioning, where you have a chorale-like texture, so like a Bach chorale, and then one voice is playing what sounds sometimes, if it's not, at first we had to get used to it because it just kind of sounds like a Bach chorale with one voice playing out of tune to us, because we spend so much time trying to tune things in just intonation and chords. But it's been actually a lot of fun, just getting that in our ears. It's more of more than a physical exercise. I think it's an oral exercise for us, and just figuring out when it's right. I think we've now gotten used to being able to hear it, but at first it was definitely difficult. And the exercises that Derrick gave us were helpful because then you can kind of repeatedly go between notes. So you can go try to hit the microtonal pitch over and over. And it's more, for me, it's an aural exercise. So, and
Yeah,
then once that, then the fingers will go where they need to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that absolutely. And it's when Ruben mentions that like now we've like gotten a little more comfortable with it and it is fun. At first, it was like, oh my gosh, how do I do this and how do I help? Yeah, but I love hearing about Derrick's thought process behind the title because for us as the musicians of this work, like it is once we got to that point of it being fun, it's like freeing. It is like we're less concerned about, I guess this is just me, but when I was first learning it, it's kind of like, okay, how out of tune do I have to be? So my brain is thinking like in terms of like going off of what I know how to do, like which is just to play in the tuning that we're used to. How out of tune from that do I need to be? And that was so hard to do that way. And so these exercises that Derrick gave us, and then just getting used to thinking about it in terms of it's just a different kind of perfect. Like it's not like I'm trying to play a little less perfect than what I'm used to make this piece work. But it's just really interesting, and it's really great seeing the progression of like our thought process and the way we're approaching it. Because at first, it definitely was like, you know, 4 different brains like freaking out over like everything on the page, all the new markings that we had never seen before, and like, you know, it's, you know, there's like basically a little dictionary in the beginning telling us how to do every little thing that Derrick wants, which can be intimidating, but we've gotten to the point where it's freeing now, and it's really exciting.
I think just going off of what Tiani said and what Derrick mentioned earlier, it's kind of like it helped me a lot once I got away from the thinking of like how much do I need to move this for it to be in the right place, and or how much do I need to move it so that how out of tune should I make it? But really, it's like, no, this is the new in tune.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So I think it's like a mental shift that way, and just getting that in the ears for us, and I'm excited for everyone to hear it. I think it's a great piece.
Yeah, we are. Derrick, is there anything else you'd like to say about the piece that just I don't know, that will.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm like touched because I didn't say anything about this piece being like about the process being from oral tradition, but to hear you say that, Ruben, I was like, but that's the whole thing, is that this type of sound comes from people who treat music as an oral tradition, and they don't care what it looks like on the page. They're fully absorbed with the sound. You're talking about music that's coming from like areas of the world that are so much older than other areas of the world. And so, yes, they have access to all the notes, the infinite amount of notes rather than just the 12. And you just pick the intervals, and yes, and then that's the right one, whatever that one happens to be. And I think it's so amazing, Tiani and Ruben, just to hear you guys talk about that and say, well, this is just a different kind of tuning, because when you're playing this and you're playing like that, when you go and you go visit some of these other places in the world, and then you hear them playing these things, you can hear them playing some of these gouche or so, and some of the gouche shake these specific modes that they're playing are also shared in Arabic music. And so they're going to be able to connect too. And it's really kind of connecting people through sounds. And I do want to say, like, for the audience, that I think that a lot of times when people talk about microtonalism, they have a specific idea of how this is going to play out, like Western classical style and contemporary Western classical idioms with microtonalism. And then there being this idea, well, oh, well, it's just going to be like this kind of out of tune conceptual art thing. and we're just going to be like, oh gosh, like I can't wait till this is over. And that's just simply what's not happening. This is modal microtonalism. This kind of microtonalism has been around for 1,000 years. And it's based off of like voice singing to one another and telling stories through music, wordless stories. The story can be whatever comes to mind when you hear it, but it's a wordless story, modal microtonalism. And I couldn't be happier to hear their responses to the way that they've kind of grown. In a way, I think the delay of the concert, I think also kind of helped them marinate even further with the piece. And I will say that even with American Mirror, very first time that string quartet sat down with American Mirror, they were like, "Oh no." It was just they were terrified because you grow up as a classical musician thinking like, well, I've got to do everything's got to be placed in this specific spot. And the first thing that happens is like some of the rhythms are so intense that you have to let go. You have to be free and you have to say, here's where it starts, here's where it ends. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there.
Mhm.
And we're gonna get there together. And I think that that's but that particular approach to music making is what people who do music as an oral tradition, they do that all the time. Right. So it's just wonderful to hear you guys say. I'm completely like, wow. Did
Yeah.
you guys have any questions for me like about the piece to like rehearsal it? Can I clear up any like weird stuff?
I don't think so. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, like everything that you gave us is super helpful.
All right. I was trying to be like, okay, what would they ask me about this? Okay, let me put that in notes.
Hmm. I know the first time we listened to it, we were like, "Whoa, this is gonna be hard to line some of this stuff up."
That's
But
right. Yeah.
then when we talked with you, I felt a little bit better about it.
Yeah, about the
Yeah,
direction one
yeah.
thing. Yeah, that's in like all my pieces. It's all like everybody relax. I got into a discussion. There was a couple other composers, some colleagues, about whether or not whether or not you so a lot of times people would see music like this in American Mirror and say that it's like over notated. Like there's an idea of like over notation. Like, did you have to put it like where like, some of these minute things are like this? And the discussion was, well, can't they just play it that way, but you don't have to like notate it that way. It can be a little bit more like quantifiable. And I was like, sure, but the thing is everybody's trained to play a simple thing exactly the way that it
Yeah.
looks. And
It's written,
so,
yeah.
yeah, so like if I didn't over notate American Mirror, it would not have sounded like that at all. And it's the same with this piece where like the over notation is really just done on purpose because it, either they're going to relax or they won't relax and it'll still sound like they relaxed. So,
Yeah.
so, so either way, it's going to sound relaxed and like, is like, wait, are they improvising? Like that should be the question. And that was there were people when the American Mirror was first played, it's just like, I felt like most of that was improvised. Was it? And then they look at the score and they're like, oh, what is
Yeah.
going on? And I was like, yes, but that was the purpose is that it could sound so effortless because it's a conversation between four people playing string instruments, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm interested in that, so that's cool. Awesome.
Well, hopefully when you hear him play it for the first time, you won't be shocked and horrified.
Oh no,
Um,
I'm sure it's gonna be
yeah,
fine.
you'll have an opportunity, obviously, to work a little bit on it.
Yeah. And it's gonna sound like a different string quartet, I can tell you that. Good
I
point.
think is a great opportunity is as a quartet, you now will have the ability to program this as many times as you want and to get to live with this piece, over months or years or whatever, as opposed to sometimes, a piece written for an orchestra that, you know, maybe 2 years later another orchestra does it, and then that's a new group of musicians and and this way you'll really be able to, I'm sure you're gonna discover new things about this piece. So the premiere is always very exciting, but I'm always excited about the performances that come after a premiere, and once a piece really gets in your bones and your fingers, and then gets out into the world and other quartets play it. And yeah, it's very exciting. I'm always thrilled to be part of bringing new works into the world. So thank you all for helping us on that journey. And I should just say that the program that you've put this on is a very Ivalas program, and it includes music by Jesse Montgomery, Carlos Simon, and Eleanor Alberga. And what an incredible array of music that we're going to hear on that program. So I hope anyone watching this prior to February 25th can join us at Caramoor on the 25th of February. And we look forward to seeing all of you there and experiencing Deliverance. So thank you all once again, and we'll see you soon.